Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Texas Blue Action Podcast. This is where we're telling the story of Texans and the fight for our state. My name is Lana Hansen, and today my guest is Rochelle Garza. She's a Democratic candidate for the Texas Attorney General. And Rochelle, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And I also want to thank you for stepping up and running for this seat. I am so excited to see a woman enter this race. And your launch video was incredible. Learning more about what you have done, in your career and fighting for Texas and women of Texas. And so let's start with just having you tell us a little more about yourself for those that might not know your history and where you're coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally my name's Rochelle Garza. I am originally from Brownsville, Texas, and Brownsville is a town right on the border with Matamoros, Tamaulipas. So it's right on the border with Mexico, on the Texas-Mexico border. I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley. My parents were both public school teachers, and that's how they met. But before that, my dad was a farmer, so he was one of 13 kids. And we go back several generations in the region. So he comes from a farming family, and he ended up becoming a teacher and then went to law school and then became a judge.
Amazing. That's a fantastic story.
My dad's a fantastic human. My mom was raised by a World War II veteran and a mom that, after she finished raising her 3 children, ended up going back to work and became the head of a credit union for the city. So I come from a long line of people that work really hard and value education and hard work and community. Mm-hmm. So those were the values that I saw my parents live. I also grew up with a sibling with disabilities. My brother, Robbie, my oldest brother, he experienced a traumatic brain injury during childbirth. And so he grew up needing a lot of advocacy and a lot of help. Healthcare was incredibly important for our family, mm-hmm. just like it is for so many families across Texas and across this country. And, whether that was watching my parents fight to get coverage for his wheelchair lift to get him to school, or, my mom testifying against a bad bill in the Texas legislature that it would have been harmful to people with disabilities like my brother. I saw my parents fight, and that instilled in me the reality that the health of my family depended on all of us being okay. And that's how I look at community. And that's how I look at my role as an attorney, is as someone who is there to advocate for everyone, because I recognize, the erosion of rights begins with the most vulnerable. And if we don't protect people, we're not going to be a healthy society. So that's why I've spent my career fighting for people that have been overlooked and left behind, just like, we saw with Jane Doe, who was mm-hmm. an immigrant teen that needed access to abortion care while she was in immigration detention, but was denied by the Trump administration. So, those are the things that have really influenced me and influenced the work that I've focused on. Mm-hmm. With that case in particular, for your audience, if they don't know, it ended up going to the Supreme Court, but not before we had to fight back Ken Paxton, our current Attorney General, because he tried to intervene in that case and prevent Jane Doe from exercising her right to abortion care. And also not before having to fight now Supreme Court Judge Brett Kavanaugh, who mm-hmm. is sitting on the Supreme Court right now, getting ready to take away our rights. I even testified against him in his confirmation hearings to the Supreme Court because of that case and because of his actions in that case. We ultimately won for Jane Doe, which is an incredible story in and of itself. We got her the care she needed. And we also stopped the government from ever doing it again to anyone who is in immigration detention and a teen. So they have access to their rights.
Sure. And that work is so important, right? And something that is continuing to be under attack in our state. And so you've already taken on some pretty heavy hitters in your career with, Ken Paxton, and we're talking about Brett Kavanaugh and these men that are just determined to tell us and others what we need to be doing and not hearing our voices. And so tell me about your decision to run for this office and why you decided to do it now.
There were a lot of reasons why. I've been fighting. I've been more recently working on the border as a civil rights attorney,
Mhm.
and going through the Trump administration and seeing how hard that's been for my community and for Texas, and just sort of the the actions by these folks in power that are really extremely harmful to every single Texan. It felt like this was the right time to use my experiences and my skills in this way.
Mhm.
Ken Paxton has got to go, but it's really critically important that we elect someone to that position that understands our communities and that is reflective of our communities. I'm someone that has represented people seeking child support,
Mhm.
having to defend cases for possession of marijuana, things like that. And I also know what it's like to build up a case all the way up to the Supreme Court. So I think having someone in that place, a Latina from the border that knows that, comes from a humble background. I've got tons of student debt. I'm just like a lot of Texans. And we won't have real solutions to these problems unless we have someone that is reflective of our communities.
And I think that's such an important point, right? That the leadership that we're seeing at our state level right now is only representative of a small minority in our state. And we need people like yourself that have the shared lived experience of so many other Texans, because you're right. Until we have those voices at the table, we're not going to be able to support and protect all the Texans here. I mean, we're such a massively diverse state, right? And our representation right now is so limited. And so, uh, tell me, you've talked about why this is really important to you. Tell me about those issues that you really want to dig into and accomplish if you win.
I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of undoing of the policies that we've seen in place. I mean, we've seen an unprecedented attack on reproductive rights, on voting rights. So we're going to have to focus on undoing those things, and also making sure that we focus on healthcare and focus on making sure that families are healthy, because that's really what the role of the attorney general is. It's the attorney for the people, and it's for the people of Texas. So the attorney general's office is in charge of collecting child support, and people need child support to make sure that their kids can eat and make sure there's a roof over their head, and it's underfunded. So making sure that the agency has those resources, making sure that funding goes into voting rights protection, and making sure that we have a civil rights division. That's something that would be very important to me. Sort of making sure that we use this position to be protective of civil rights of everyday Texans, and that includes access to abortion care, that includes access to the ballot box, but that also includes making sure that we don't sue municipalities that are just trying to protect their constituents from the pandemic, because that is
Mhm.
still very much an
Mhm.
issue. um, I could go on and on and on about this, but I think it's critically important that we focus on the things that are going to build up families and communities in the state of Texas instead of tearing them down.
I mean, I think that that's so important, and again, so much more representative of what's needed in Texas than what we currently have. And just to circle back for a second about Ken Paxton suing municipalities, we've seen that is suing school boards for trying to protect children that started school this year with this raging variant and incredibly high numbers. And when school boards stepped up to protect the students in their care, he filed lawsuits against them. And so, I'm curious to hear you mentioned that that's something that you certainly don't think is okay, but when it comes to that particular topic, you know, what did you think about that while that was happening and those choices that he was making?
I mean, I think it's very deliberate and it's political.
Mhm.
It's not just ignoring the science, but it's actively harmful to people that are just trying to make sure their kids are safe. And we saw that happen over and over and over again during the pandemic. My hometown, my mayor received a letter from Ken Paxton the um, about the restaurant capacities, because we had lower restaurant capacities than the state did, and
Mhm.
was threatening to sue. Instead of trying to applaud these communities that are at school boards, municipalities for trying to protect their folks, he's attacking them and he's making the matters worse.
Right.
So I, it's incredibly harmful. And Ken Paxton did get shot down on the mask mandate, if I'm not mistaken, pursuant to the Americans with Disabilities Act,
That's right.
which is absolutely incredible
Mhm.
because you know it violates the rights of children with disabilities. And this
Exactly.
is who we have in office: is we have someone who is literally attacking children that with special needs that need protection, and children as a general matter. And he's got to go because it's
100%. And as we know with the pandemic, that it's disproportionately affected people of color, and essential workers, and high risk individuals, that are immunocompromised. And so I feel like that he's just telling us exactly who he is in that space. That he's listening to this small group of folks that politically are going to show up and vote for him because he was willing to go against mask mandates, but sacrificing the Texans that are most at risk. And oh, go ahead. Were you going to say
I was
something?
going to say, and that's why we've got. I mean, we're a minority majority state,
Right.
and we're dealing with a lot of poverty issues. I've seen it a lot down south, and you're right, it disproportionately impacts people of color, communities of color. Uh, but you can't gerrymander a statewide election.
Right.
So our voices still matter, especially in these statewide races.
Hmm.
Governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general. We can make a real difference and change Texas if we mobilize and we vote.
100%. And that's such an important point, because what we saw come out of the legislature with the new maps is this real feeling for a lot of people of hopelessness, right? Like, you can't out organize gerrymandering. But to your point, none of that matters in our statewide elections, and so it's massively important that people all over, the state are getting involved with their local organizations, their local candidates that they support, and doing that hard work on the ground. And that's something that we do at Blue Action Democrats. I mean, while we're talking about this, if you live in Williamson County, Austin, San Antonio, the Hill Country, or Houston, we are organizing there and have events coming up, and we support all Democrats up and down the ballot. So, please plug in at blueactiondems.com, and we will certainly put you to work to help state level candidates like Rochelle, because to your point, every single vote is going to matter. Every single vote is going to matter. And I think that with Texas, being what's considered a non-voting state for so long, we really need to tell people that that showing up does matter, right? That your vote does count, because that's why we have been a non-voting state for so long, is that people in progressive politics feel like they can't make a difference, and they can. So, tell me about events or things that you have coming up for, your candidacy that people could potentially join in or get involved with.
So we're working our way through the state. We launched earlier this month, and uh, I'm still based in the Rio Grande Valley. I'm based in Brownsville, so we're going to start with events in Brownsville. We've been in Dallas and Austin and Houston, and we'll continue to make the rounds and make sure that we're reaching people. So there will be more to come. If you do want to follow me on social media, that's where you'll find most of the updates. It's at Rochelle M. Garza. M is for Mercedes, my great grandmother's name. And you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So we'll put updates there. And I also on my website, Rochelle Garza for Texas.com. And we'll update you through those platforms.
That's fantastic. And, we've covered, a few things here, but Rochelle, is there anything else that you feel like is just massively important that you want to address by running for this office? What's another part of your platform that you want people to know about?
Well, I also think it's really important. So there's a lot of voter apathy, and I really want to talk to people about that issue. I want us to let go of these hindrances that we've put in front of us, these blocks that we think that we've got. We can actually do it. We have a real opportunity here. Ken Paxton only won by 0.6 back in 2018. And since then,
wait, say that again. 0.6. I mean,
so,
for anybody listening out there, I need you to hear that because it is nothing. Okay. 0.6 is such a small number. We can do this. Okay. And sorry to interrupt you, but I need everyone to understand that. It's so important. And you're speaking my love language when you're talking about voter apathy. So thank you. Okay. So continue, please.
No, of course. I mean, 0.6 is, you're right. It is a very small number. So a few things about that. So 0.6, that's in 2018. Beto O'Rourke, when he challenged Abbott I'm sorry, I'm mixing up the races.
Okay.
Cruz, right? This last time.
They're all kind of the same.
When he challenged him the last time, he only lost by 240,000 votes. So 240,000 votes. Since 2018, 210,000 Latinos every year in Texas have turned 18. That's now, fast forward to now, that's 840,000, about 840,000. That's almost 1 million new voters. We can do it. This is the reality of it. We can do it if we focus on voter turnout, if we believe that we have the power, because we do have the power. And if we have the right folks that are running for things like myself, that I'm running for Attorney General.
Right. That gets people excited. I mean, it's important to have the candidates that people can relate to and get excited about. I mean, I'm just going to say this bluntly, and not that anybody's not a good candidate. They're all great. But, so far we've had a bunch of white guys at the top of the ticket. And it's so exciting to see women and women of color stepping in this race, because that's what's going to help turn out people. Right. Yeah. Because people can relate to that. And what we know is that women, when they win office, focus on policies that are for families. They focus on policies that support healthcare. I mean, this is data, right? This is shown in what we accomplish when women are in office. So to your point, we need good candidates, and we need a diverse slate of candidates to energize the base and turn out voters.
Absolutely. And as a party, we are the ones with the solutions. We have been doing the hard work. One of the most incredible things is, what the House passed was $35 cap on insulin.
Right. Thank you, James Talarico, if you're listening. Thank you.
No, thank you. Because, I think about the Rio Grande Valley, where we have the highest rates of diabetes and the highest rates of diabetes-related amputations. That insulin price is going to fundamentally change the lives of people in that region. If we expand Medicaid, and we will fundamentally change the lives of a lot of Texans. And these are things that Democrats bring to the table. We understand and we care about our communities, because at the end of the day, every single Texan cares about their family, and they care about making sure that they have a roof over their head, they have a good paying job, and that their kids just get a fair shake and a chance at something. That's all I want, and what I want to see for my family. And those are the things that I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on building up families as much as possible through this position.
Sure. And, when we're talking about Medicaid expansion, that's just dollars that our state level leadership have left out of bringing into our state to literally care for people. And this was never more important or never more visual than what happened during the pandemic. So, for example, here in Austin, what we saw was our hospitals filling up with people from rural areas because they didn't have access to the care that they needed during a pandemic. And many of them, being of a certain political persuasion, were also listening to leadership that were saying things like vaccinations aren't important or the pandemic is a hoax, right? And so then when it hit those communities, they had to travel 3, 6, and more hours, right, to get the care they need because hospitals were shut down when Medicaid wasn't expanded. And regardless of what your care issue is, you should have access to healthcare in your community. And our leadership have just left those dollars sitting on the table,
Yeah.
To not provide that for the folks in Texas.
Yeah, and it shouldn't matter your own personal persuasion. You deserve healthcare.
Right, regardless of who you are.
Yeah, regardless of who you are, where you live, if you're in a rural community, you matter and you deserve healthcare.
You
And
should not have to drive hours to have access to a hospital.
absolutely 100%.
Like plain and simple. So I love that that's something that's really important to you. And I guess as we get ready to close up here, Rochelle, I would just love to hear what your hopes are for Texas and how you're feeling about 2022. You mentioned that we have a real opportunity to make a big difference, and myself, I'm feeling very optimistic about it. But somebody who's out in the field and doing this work as a candidate, what are you seeing and how are you feeling about where we're headed?
I think there is so much to be hopeful for in Texas. We are, seeing hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel on the pandemic. But, I see Texas as this beautiful, wonderful, welcoming place. And that is, that's who we are at our core. I saw that in my community, especially, when they came together against the Trump administration and were helping out new arrivals, people that were immigrants that were coming in, people that had experienced trauma, and that's who we are at the end of the day. And we just have to make sure that we believe that ourselves, and that we believe that we matter and that we can make a difference, and we can do that with our vote.
Mhm.
So my hope is that people recognize their power, recognize their ability to make a real change in this state, and that there has never been more of an opportunity than right now. And we can do it. We can do it from, the governorship all the way down. But we've got to get out there and vote. We've got to talk to our family. We've got to approach things with love and compassion and understanding. And
Mhm.
we can change Texas.
I 100% agree. And, I think that I would argue that this election is one of the most important elections in the history of Texas, and the opportunity that we have here. And not only will it affect each of us as individual Texans, but we have a real power opportunity at a national level if we flip Texas too. And so, just to reiterate, it's going to take everybody. It's going to take everybody talking to their family. It's going to take having hard conversations. And it's going to take all of us getting together to do the work, in supporting candidates, in supporting organizations that are doing the work on the ground. And so I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Rochelle, thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts on this early morning, the day before holiday. So I really appreciate you taking the time. And, again, find Rochelle on all the social channels. And if you're interested in getting involved in neighborhood organizing from Williamson County to Houston, email me at info@blueactiondems.com or check out our website at blueactiondems.com. And we look forward to seeing y'all next week. And thanks again to Progress Texas for letting us come on here and talk about all the things Texas politics.
Thank you, Lana. Thank you, everyone.
Y'all have a great holiday weekend.
Bye.